I think of the life of the miner who must work all his day underground, where his lamplight is all that will shine there, and it's dark and it's damp all around. It is 2 or 3 miles to the coal face, and the tunnel is jagged and low, but he cannot find work on the surface, so it's down in the mines he must go.
And I'm joined by Seamus Rynn, somebody who worked in the mines himself, has a long and distinguished family tradition with mining, and indeed somebody who was very much to the fore of bringing the Rynn mining experience, where we're recording these interviews, to fruition over 20 years ago. Seamus, you're very welcome. A great place to start is probably with the association of your late dad, whose photograph is here on the hutch beside me. For many long years he would have worked in the mines. He was a firesman. What are your memories growing up as a young lad of your dad working in the mines, Seamus?
Well, I suppose the first memory is that he'd worked different hours to most of the miners. He used to do work on the coal cutting machine, what was known as the back shift or the night shift. And then in later years, then he worked on the day shift, but he'd have to go to work earlier in the morning, because the term used to run that time when the coal cutting machine would do its job in the mine. It was known as cutting the run, and the run was where all along the face of coal, so that there was coal for men to shovel out when they came to work at 8 o'clock. So himself and 2 other men used to go that bit earlier to work around 6 o'clock. And my father had a company van for that. Used to take them, a couple of them early to work like that.
Yeah. That job on the coal cutting machine, and I've heard it over the years growing up, and indeed we've heard it in some of the interviews here as well, Seamus, it was a job that not everyone could do. It was a skillful enough job. There was a fair amount of skill and craft needed in it.
There was. There's some, like every other, I suppose, job, you needed a bit of experience in it, because you had to assess the roof, and you had to assess the height so that the machine would get through on the seam of coal, and if it didn't get through, it would get stuck, and that was a whole other late night or early morning for you, as the case may be. So you had to have a certain amount of skill in that. There was 3 men involved, and one man would be operating the controls of the machine. The other man would be on the winch that pulled the coal cutter along the face of the coal face. And the other man then was putting up props to support the roof as the machine went by, and left a 3-inch cut on the face.
The skill and the craft of the miners, and again it's something, Seamus, that keeps coming up in these interviews that we're doing, was probably a major contributing factor to the relatively small number of accidents over a long period of time.
That's very true, John, because all the miners all looked out for each other. That at different stages during the mine would take weight, as they say, because there'd be subsidence in the mine because the coal had been taken away. And in most areas there was rock or shale put back in to replace the coal. But no matter how well that was done, it wouldn't be as solid as the coal that had been taken away from it. So you had subsidence, and at different times the mine would be taking weight, as the term was used. And all the miners would say that place of mine, or up on such a slope, that was the tunnels in the mine, you need to be careful and look out for yourself. And when they passed that information on to each other, that meant that use more pit props or be more aware. And miners was always looking out for each other. There was great camaraderie.
And there was a tendency as well to look after young miners in the start.
Yes, so that'd be always.
Yeah, in the early stages of it. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about, I suppose, the whole process of maybe growing up in a Rynn back then. And when you were young, the vocational school in Drumshanbo would have come about and come into fruition at that stage as well. And you used to cycle to and from there. There was no buses at that stage.
No, there was not, John. No, I was in the first year that school was opened. That was in 1964. And for 2 years we cycled morning and evening in and out of town. And if you were lucky coming home in the evening, there'd be a tractor and trailer coming up the hill down the way there, and you'd hang on to the back of the trailer to get towed up the hill.
Yeah.
But
That was the front runner to the electric bikes that you see out there. Seamus, wasn't it?
well, the tractor driver mightn't be always that happy, but he could be shaking his fish that you to stop hanging onto his trailer. But yeah, again, going back to youth in Rynn at that time, what happened most of the time was, as you were able to look for a summer job when you got the holidays, and you were off to the mine, and basically you became a man overnight. When you be a couple of weeks in the mine, there might be some man absent who worked known as a drawer, and the drawer was the fella that took the coal from the coal face out to where the wire rope system took it to the surface. And if there was one of those men off, some fireman might ask you, will you draw a few hutches off such a man? And you'd do that, and you'd get help maybe if you weren't that used to it at the time. A normal amount of coal to shift for a day would be about 30 hutches. Yeah. And that's the way you came in. And then there might be someone else off, and the next thing you found yourself to be a drawer.
And it was a natural progression.
This had happened, yeah. We'll say a natural progression, it would say maybe 3 to 4 weeks in the mine. So you went home with a good packet of money, and you joined the rest of the people in Shambo on a Sunday night for the Mayflower and the dancing, and you basically were a man overnight. And that was grand until September came, and it was time to dig out the school bag again. And unfortunately, very, very few swapped the pit bag for the school bag and went back to school again, unless they had parents who insisted that they went back to college.
Yeah. And I was just going to ask you, when the vocational school opened, and here before that, the national progression was maybe finish national school or whatever and end up in the mines. Then the vocational school came along, but there was serious competition between the mines and the school, I suppose, for local lads to see where they'd stay. And the majority, probably for a period of time, were shifting towards the mines.
Well, as I explained to you, John, there wasn't a competition insofar as the young fella got used to it was weekly wage, or as fortnightly wages it was at that time, and he got used and fond of money, and there wasn't a competition as such, because
once he got the money,
that
and the taste of it.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your own memories. You worked for a period of time in the mines yourself. What are your memories from those, Seamus?
Well, I suppose it was hard work, yeah. But having that said, there was great camaraderie in it, and there'd be good crack, and there was always a good amount of help. There'd be some men that wouldn't help you, and there'd be more men that would be very helpful to you.
Yes.
You know, and I say, it was enjoyable for a young fella, because there'd be lots of banter and what have you going round on it.
You obviously had that experience, but you went on and you went into business for yourself after that. Was it a big change to come out of the mines and the experience that you were on that and then go working for yourself?
Well, I started off, as I told you, with Lynn and Leahy. And then when I was 2 or 3 years there, they came up a job in the workshops with Rynn collieries, as they were then, down there, and that was welding and fitting and doing what have you. And I got to work there, and then there was great skill among the workforce that was there, and we learned a lot of what we know from working with other people and other men that was there at the time. And that then took me back down the mine on a lot of occasions, fixing and repairing the coal cutter. There was a lot of pumps in the mine that you'd have to go and change motors on and what have you. And other pieces of equipment, then it'd be haulage engines and things. So we worked while it was on the surface, a lot of the time it took you down the mine. Yeah. So you'd be quite familiar with the workings and the happenings of the mine. Yeah,
you were getting constant reminders. And I presume, was there different challenges every day with parts of equipment that would break down? And
there was, yeah.
And the rock, I presume, I know from quarrying here that it's one of the hardest types of rock in Europe, and it was very, very severe on machinery as a result. I presume that obviously would have been the same for mining.
It would, yeah, but most of the mines here was driven in shale, which is a softer substance. Our tunnel here in the mining experience is a rock tunnel, but it was driven specifically for to extract the crow coal that was to be used to fuel the new 60 megawatt power station that had been proposed to replace the 15 megawatt that used the bituminous tap seam of coal. That seam of coal that's there now is crow coal seam, and that's why it's in the rock. And when we were looking for a location for our mining museum, we chose that because it had the height and it had its closeness to the village, and accessibility was.
It was an inspired choice. Before I talk to you about the museum, take me back 34, 35 years ago, Seamus. You would have had a young family at the time. The writing was on the wall that the mines were going to close. How worrying of a period of that was it to be living in Rynn and this major employer about to go?
There was a lot of anxiety at the time, and fellas all made different choices. Like at the time the mines closed, some fellas immigrated. More the older generation had gotten some redundancy, and they just put it away and bolted down the hatches and walked away under. A lot of them had small holdings of land, and more of them then went and middle-aged fellas sought other employment. Some of them went to meat factory in Ruski, and they all did different things. But a lot of them found employment. It was the one thing we used to always say in mining. Anyone that ever worked in the mine scene was never afraid of any other work after, because he was that. And while mining sometimes is looked down on as being maybe a third-class occupation, a lot of them miners was very skilled, and that was proved after the mines closed, because they went here and there elsewhere seeking employment, and was always able to fit in and do.
One of the things that has come up a good few times in our interviews as well, Seamus, that when fellas went to other jobs, then foremen and gangers used to almost have to tell them to slow down the pace. They were you working so fast and so hard in the mines that they were bringing that type of work mentality to new jobs, and over a longer period of time and a longer day wasn't always sustainable. So it took a bit of getting used to for them.
Aye, because they were always, all the mining work was done on piecework, where if you produced so many ton of coal, you got paid per ton, and if you took it to the drawer, as there was no way you fill it into the carriage, which seems to be ABC, and took that out, that was done by the ton. And fellas, there was no need for foremen really in the mine, because it was self-policing insofar as that if you didn't do the work, you didn't get the tonnage. And
I remember, Seamus, and we can talk about the mining experience here. I remember back in the early 90s, 1996, and as a kind of a front runner for this, there was a mining exhibition ran at the hall down in Rynn at the time, and there was memorabilia and everything that was taken in at that. You had great vision, you and others, early on after the mines closed, to keep that heritage, to keep that tradition alive, to make sure that there was a testament, a monument, call it what you will, to what was a huge employer, a huge tradition in the area for so many years. So you acted quickly on putting plans together after the mines closed to make sure that this particular establishment came about.
we did, yeah, but again, it was, as you correctly say, John, it was to preserve the heritage and the memories of the area as a major employer, like down through the years. And it'd be a pity to let it go, because it was some of the last work on coal mines that was in the country at the time. And we set about doing that. Now, we got a lot of help and support along the way, and only for that it probably mightn't have happened.
Yeah.
But the exhibition you referred to in the hall, that was a kind of a forerunner, surely. And it was to feel the water as to whether there was an enthusiasm there for to go ahead and preserve the heritage of the area.
Yeah. Absolutely, a demand for it. Now, that was one thing, having the mining exhibition, but there was a lot of work that you had to put in then in getting, obviously, funding to get this museum up and running. And I presume, you'll be able to tell me, I presume there was probably a lot of it at the stage you would need a share of match funding, and you worked extensively on getting that together as well. It wasn't just a blank check, go and build this. Yeah, no. It was completely opposite to that school of thought.
Well, when the mines closed, all the various agencies came rushing to help the valley and the community at the time. And at that time, it was part of the ESB's Get Out that they put up $1 million fund. Back in those days, that was quite a lot of money. And towards that end, that was supposed to nurture and set up new industry and new in the area. And the Rynn Enterprise Centre was built as a result of that, plus 4 others, one on them Keaton, them Shambo and Ballinamore. And that only burned up, if that's the right way to say it, 500,000 of that money. And then we were, at that question in the mines closed, that there was a development company established in the area. And we established that time. And shortly after that was set up, we were working away to see what we could do. There was different FOSS schemes done by the development company. And then Leader happened to come on the to be happening. And we made an application to Leader. And the word came back is there wasn't enough of population in the area, and it went out and out and out. And it finally took in Leitrim and North Roscommon up to as far as Boyle. So that was an application of Leader. The Enterprise Centre down in the village, it housed that programme, and then they had funding that you could make application to, and we made application to them for a heritage centre here, or a visitor centre, and a grew from that.
Yeah, as I said, the rest is history. For walkers, Seamus, that would be passing by and maybe watching this interview in years to come, maybe on the mountaintops here in Rigna, looking down on Loch Allen. For visitors that will be coming here maybe in years to come and might be watching this video as well, we are recording this almost 35 years on. We're in late 2024 now at this stage. 20 years on from the mining centre opening here, or just over 20 years on, did you ever envisage at the time that the amount of visitors that would be going to have come through the doors, that would have happened?
No, you'd be hoping it, but you couldn't envisage that it would be as successful as it is. When we were doing our business plan for it at the time, the figures was used about 26,000 per annum to justify the application to the funding, and it's all surpassed that now. We're up into about 30 or 35,000 a year.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fantastic, and it's great to see all the people that's coming here. Final question for you, Seamus. As you've been in this area all your life, you've had the experience of the mines. What would you say is unique about Rigna? What's I suppose, the way that it responded so well from the closure of the mines? Because that would have had the potential to devastate an awful lot of areas. Yet there's employment here. We've got Rigna Fuels, we've got the quarry, we've got this facility here. There's a number of other small, medium enterprises all around the area as well. I suppose resilient is the word that you could use.
Resilient, they're a very resilient community. And plus the fact that the valley was blessed by the fact that the 2 previous major employers went on to do other things, that mentioned the quarry and mentioned the smokeless fuel that's been manufactured down by what was Rigna Fuels, or Rigna College is now Rigna Fuels. And we were lucky insofar as they stayed on and gave a certain amount of employment. Quite a bit of employment, I suppose. There's about 25 or 26 in the quarry, and there's about 50 jobs in fuels. Yeah,
which is magnificent to see a vibrant community still in it, and look, it's great to see so many links to the past as well. From your time maybe working directly in the mines and maybe from fixing the machines, writing, we'd always ask this question to most of the people that we've interviewed so far. Any standout story, Seamus, that would be suitable for camera?
Well, I suppose I was that short a time under that I wouldn't have a standout story, but some of them, I remember one that I suppose I can't tell it on camera. Was a particular man, and you'd go into him for to fill out what you called, and he'd say, "Sit down now, and we'll have a smoke." But I didn't smoke any, but whether you wanted to smoke or not, you had to smoke. You had to stand still, and this man had a cigarette.
Yeah, absolutely. It was important that he got that bit of downtime.
Oh, it wasn't very important.
Yeah. Well,
you might start pulling out an odd shovel of coal and putting it in it. If you don't stop and sit down, I'll sit on you.
So he had his way of slowing down any young fellas. Yeah. Well, look, Seamus, well done on everything that's here and the development over the years. Thank you indeed for sharing some of those memories with us. And of course, your dad will be forever and a day remembered with the various photographs here at the museum and on the mining memorabilia. Seamus, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks, John.
Thanks a lot.
Privilege.